The Galactic Council had existed for over 12,000 cycles, a bastion of interstellar peace and protocol. It was composed of hundreds of species, each with their own histories, cultures, and grievances, yet bound together by treaties that had held longer than most civilizations survived. To the outside eye, the Council was the pinnacle of civilization, refined, diplomatic, and above all, stable. That illusion had only recently been extended to humanity. Humans had entered the galactic stage just 2 decades prior, a blink in cosmic terms, yet their arrival was marked with both fascination and quiet unease. They were young, erratic, ambitious. In those early meetings, they had smiled too often, spoken too freely, and moved with a confidence that unsettled species whose cultures measured respect in layers of silence and age. The Council viewed them as a primitive curiosity, not a true peer, though they would never say it outright. It was always hidden in smiles, nods, and politely distant language. Still, humanity had earned their seat. The diplomatic records noted their extraordinary response during the Heliox Drift crisis, where human engineers managed to rescue 13 drifting colony ships using technology they repurposed on the fly. They were inventive, unconventional. Their adaptability had impressed even the coldest bureaucracies. But the murmurs never faded. Too emotional, too volatile, not yet ready. Ambassador Lin had represented Earth since humanity's formal induction. A composed, multilingual specialist who had spent half her life on alien worlds. She bore the pressure of billions with a calm poise, always listening first, always speaking with measured weight. The other delegates called her respectful, though in private some whispered of her coldness. She didn't smile the way early human diplomats had. She simply watched, remembered, and responded when necessary. Over time, Earth had submitted proposals, offered trade, and worked to integrate quietly. They knew their place, or so the Council thought. Earth's representatives were careful never to overstep, even when insulted. They allowed misunderstandings to slide. They deferred to senior powers. They waited. No matter how the Serati mocked their limited fleet, or the Variant dismissed their tech as barely post-fusion, humans only listened. Politely. Patiently. The galaxy mistook that restraint for weakness. Then the message came. It arrived without encryption. No signature. Just 3 chilling words, translated perfectly into every human language. Your colony cleansed. Nova Terra had been Earth's first interstellar colony beyond Sol. Not just a political investment, but a symbolic one. It had been built with international cooperation, staffed by thousands from every continent, and held some of the brightest minds of the species. It was not military. It was never meant to be. It had nurseries, parks, libraries. It was hope in concrete form. And then it was gone. Initial communications failed. Probes sent to investigate found nothing but ash and magnetic distortion. Orbital images showed the unmistakable pattern of a high-yield kinetic strike, precision orbital bombardment. No survivors. 2 million gone in under a minute. The explosion was not the worst part. The silence afterward was. No group claimed responsibility. No apologies. No condolences. Only that brief, clinical message. A wound followed by emptiness. The Council met 3 days later. A minor emergency session. No representative from Earth spoke. Ambassador Lin sat silently, face unreadable, as the discussion wandered from trade sanctions on border pirates to mineral rights in the Krell expanse. Only once did the destruction of Nova Terra surface, mentioned by a Plarthan delegate as an unfortunate but likely isolated event. The Council moved on within minutes. Humanity did not. On Earth, there were no riots. No protests. Instead, something deeper stirred. Broadcasts changed. News anchors stopped smiling. The cultural tone shifted not toward vengeance, but toward purpose. Memorials were constructed within days. Factories pivoted. Civilian satellites were quietly rerouted. Old military alliances, dormant since Earth joined the Council, were reactivated. Languages that had drifted apart realigned. Billions, across every nation, moved in unspoken synchrony. No declarations. No slogans. Just focus. In orbit, defense networks lit up again. At Luna Station, the Navy began running simulations not used in 15 years. Civilian engineers stopped asking questions when government contracts tripled overnight. Even the artists fell silent. The great orchestra of Earth had dropped into a minor key. Ambassador Lin did not return to Earth. She remained in the council, missed no meetings, made no statements. But those who watched closely noted a change. Her words, when spoken, were sharper. The pauses between them grew heavier. She no longer corrected mispronunciations of her name. She no longer laughed during recess. And though the council did not see it yet, Earth had already decided. They would wait once more, but this time, not for approval. Nova Terra had been humanity's triumph. Positioned in the Epsiloni system, it was more than just a colony, it was a declaration. A self-sustaining world with engineered ecosystems, continental climate stabilization, and architecture blending function with art. A monument to what humans could do when no longer confined by Earth's boundaries. Families had moved there not as settlers, but as pioneers of peace. No defense grid. No weapons. Just research domes, educational centers, and a dome inscribed with the words, "We begin again." They never saw it coming. The first kinetic rods struck at orbital altitude, descending faster than sound. The blast signatures were clean, precise, military. Automated distress beacons fired milliseconds before impact, but no one responded. The defense satellites above the colony, meant for meteorological data and orbital mapping, were incinerated in the first wave. The second strike targeted population centers directly. Communications blacked out. Power grids fried. No warning, no survivors, no demand, just erasure. Within minutes, Nova Terra ceased to exist. On Earth, telemetry data failed to refresh. Operators assumed system lag, until scans confirmed total silence. Drones dispatched from a nearby outpost arrived hours later to chart terrain and vaporized infrastructure. Environmental readings confirmed it had not been a natural event. No seismic activity. No solar flares. No tectonic disruption. This was planned, deliberate, and engineered with terrifying precision. The loss wasn't just numerical. These weren't military personnel. They were linguists, botanists, teachers, children. The best of Earth's peaceful efforts had been turned to ash. Earth's Defense Council reviewed intercepted transmissions. All fingers pointed to the Sarati. Their orbital routes had passed within range days earlier. Their diplomatic corps had been lobbying against human territorial claims for months. Their state-run media referred to Nova Terra as an incursion. But in front of the council, the Sarati denied everything. Their ambassador feigned outrage, declared the accusations slander, and demanded proof. The council accepted their denial without delay, citing the lack of direct evidence. It was called a tragedy with uncertain origins. Back on Earth, the mourning began immediately. Funerals without bodies. Eulogies without closure. But beneath the sorrow, something colder took root: clarity. The idea that the galaxy was not fair, not bound by principle. That peace was respected only when backed by deterrence. For centuries, humans had theorized that true unity only arose from shared pain. Nova Terra confirmed it. The response was fast. Global military networks linked again for the first time since the Solar Defense Pact had been disbanded. Drone fleets reactivated. Asteroid mining rigs were converted into weapons foundries. A new encryption protocol, codenamed Aegis, was implemented across all defense systems. The civilian world continued, but the mood had shifted. Memorials went up, not as hollow monuments, but as gathering points. People didn't speak of revenge. They spoke of debt. Diplomatic channels remained open, but human representatives no longer offered compromise. Every gesture became deliberate. Every sentence delivered with surgical calm. Offers of cooperation dried up. Access to human technology, once freely traded, was pulled back under review. A new directive was silently passed through Earth's unified council: No reactionary aggression, but complete readiness. Intelligence units began tracking Serati fleet movements. They cataloged trade anomalies, ship signatures, and fuel expenditures. Every discrepancy became data. Every moment of silence, a preparation. Probes disappeared near the Oort line. Humanity said nothing. Research satellites changed orbits, replaced by heavier, darker shapes without identifiers. Outside Earth, allied species reached out cautiously. They offered condolences. But none challenged the official narrative that the attackers were unknown. None demanded action. Fear of disrupting the balance overruled truth. Earth noted the silence. Recorded it. Within their own systems, humans shared the unfiltered footage. Not the destruction, there was none left to show, but the before. Children planting gardens. Scientists laughing over equations. Couples walking under artificial stars. The final footage, a young girl in a green uniform waving at a camera, moments before the signal was lost. Her name was Lila. Her image became the unofficial emblem of what had been taken. Earth didn't rally with speeches. It rallied with work. The industries once focused on colonization now turned toward armament. Civil engineers transferred to classified projects. Former military officers were quietly reinstated. AI development focused on tactical applications. Interstellar transport firms received anonymous funding boosts. Yet through all of this, not one threat was issued. Not one demand made. Earth sent no ultimatums. The Serati watched for retaliation. None came. But the silence grew heavier. And everyone listening knew something was building. The chamber was full. Representatives from over 300 species had assembled in the Grand Council Hall following Earth's formal petition. The request was unprecedented, an emergency address by a junior species invoking Article 13, the right to speak before judgment. Most assumed it was ceremonial, symbolic, a last grasp for sympathy before humanity quietly withdrew. Few expected anything more than grief-drenched appeals or political theatrics. They were wrong. Ambassador Lin stepped forward without entourage or translator. No scripted introduction. No pleasantries. She stood still, spine straight, hands steady. When she spoke, her voice was calm, level, but it carried without amplification. We were told this council exists to protect order, to resolve disputes, to prevent war through cooperation. When we joined, we believed that. We aligned with its values. We committed resources, shared technologies, accepted oversight. We followed every protocol. Her gaze moved from delegation to delegation, not searching for approval, but making it known they were being seen. 1 month ago, our colony, Nova Terra, was erased. 2 million of our people, civilians, scientists, children, were exterminated in an unprovoked strike. There was no warning. No justification. No survivors. You call it an incident. You call it unfortunate. You debate vocabulary while we bury the void. Some murmurs stirred, but she didn't pause. We provided telemetry data. We tracked the trajectories. We identified probable fleet signatures. The Serati deny involvement. The Council accepts their denial without question, citing insufficient proof. You demand evidence that no attacker ever leaves behind. She took a breath, but not from emotion. She was measuring her pace. You call us emotional, unstable, young. That may be true. But we understand loss. And we do not mistake silence for peace. We recognize the shape of indifference. We see who benefits from inaction. A brief shift in tone, just enough to signal the turn. You welcomed us with conditions. You praised our creativity, then dismissed our concerns. We asked for cooperation. You offered observation. We extended trust. You returned silence. Even now, no resolution has been offered. No investigation has been authorized. No measures taken. She reached into her coat and placed a compact data module on the podium. This contains the final transmissions from Nova Terra. Visuals, audio logs, environmental readings, and emergency signals. Everything your analysts have already ignored. We are not here to beg. We are not here to convince. We are here to acknowledge what this body refused to admit. She looked directly at the Sarati representative. You attacked our home? There was no rise in volume. No dramatic pause. Just 6 words, delivered with absolute finality. The silence that followed was instant, brittle. Even the ambient hum of environmental systems seemed to stop. You think because we have only one colony beyond our system, it matters less. You believe we will grieve and forget. You are wrong. Nova Terra was not an outpost. It was a promise. It was our future. You did not simply destroy lives. You declared intent. And this council, by its refusal to act, became complicit. She stepped back from the podium slightly. As of this address, Earth formally invokes Section 9 of the Cooperative Charter. We suspend all non-defensive treaty obligations. We recall our observers. We halt technology exchanges. All diplomatic ties are under review. The weight of that was immediate. Trade agreements, defense pacts, research programs, all frozen by a single declaration. But she wasn't finished. We will not retaliate blindly. We are not here to make threats. We will not strike in rage. But we will prepare. We will adapt. We will ensure that no species ever again looks at humanity and sees weakness. She looked around the chamber one last time. You may call us young, but you will remember us. With that, she stepped away from the podium. No final words. No parting gestures. Just the echo of truth that had been spoken plainly. The fallout from Earth's declaration was immediate. Within hours, trade channels began rerouting. Joint research initiatives paused. Diplomatic envoys from allied species withdrew quietly, unsure of where they stood. Many had built their relations with Earth on the assumption of compliance, not confrontation. Now, faced with a humanity no longer willing to defer, the galaxy hesitated. The balance had shifted. Earth's withdrawal was not chaos. It was coordinated. Strategic, calculated, almost surgical. Within the span of a week, orbital shipyards were sealed off from foreign observers. Transit lanes once open to Allied vessels were placed under restricted access. Communication with non-human entities was filtered through military liaison nodes. The message was clear: engagement would now happen on Earth's terms, not the Council's. Behind the scenes, Earth ramped up infrastructure at unprecedented speed. Civilian corporations that once thrived on exports were repurposed into defense contractors. The Assembly approved funding for expansion of orbital defense platforms, carrier fleets, and black site research facilities. Shipyards ran on 28-hour cycles. AI-managed logistics optimized construction down to microsecond delays. No fanfare. No announcements. Just results. The most notable change was doctrinal. For centuries, Earth's space doctrine had focused on deterrence, enough to signal strength, not provoke. That policy vanished overnight. In its place emerged a doctrine of asymmetrical dominance, never matching numbers, always surpassing capability. Speed over mass. Precision over intimidation. Human warships became faster, quieter, smarter. Prototypes were fielded within weeks, unannounced, undetected, until needed. The psychological shift was equally profound. For a species often criticized for emotional volatility, Earth became eerily calm. Media outlets no longer sensationalized or speculated. They informed. Public sentiment aligned not around vengeance but necessity. Nova Terra had unified humanity in a way no political movement ever had. Petty divisions evaporated. Economic barriers bent to common defense. Nations once separated by ideology collaborated like organs of a single body. In deep space, scout vessels began appearing near Sarati borders, not hostile, not cloaked, just present. Their positioning deliberate, patterns unpredictable. Each one capable of faster-than-light disengagement, heavily shielded, and equipped with sensors well beyond civilian specs. The Sarati noticed. Their fleets adjusted. But Earth's ships never crossed the line. They didn't need to. The Council attempted mediation. Proposals were drafted, committees formed, appeals made for de-escalation. Earth acknowledged none of them. Their silence had spoken louder than any words. Now, humanity mirrored that silence back. Other species watched. Some quietly restructured their treaties, offering Earth favorable terms for technology access. Others began internal reviews of their own defense readiness. A few sent covert inquiries, not to warn Earth off, but to join. Not officially, but practically. Humanity, for the first time, wasn't seen as inexperienced, it was seen as inevitable. The Serati, cornered by growing suspicion, issued a public denial weeks later. They labeled the attack a false flag operation, blamed rogue interests, and warned against further escalation. Earth issued no response. But a classified burst transmission was intercepted days later, an encrypted signal directed at the outer rim of Serati-controlled space. Within 48 hours, 2 of their black site facilities went offline. No damage reports. No casualties. Just silence and absence. No one claimed responsibility. But the Serati stopped issuing statements. The Council, faced with a precedent it had never accounted for, a species openly disregarding its authority without chaos ensuing, began to fracture. Smaller member states questioned long-standing alliances. Larger powers re-evaluated their security doctrines. For the first time in generations, the Council feared not just war, but irrelevance. Through all of this, Earth never once declared war. It didn't need to. Its actions spoke clearly: you erased our people, now we erase your assumptions. Not through destruction, but through certainty. Every move was calculated to restore one truth: that human life was not cheap, and its loss would be paid for, not in rage, but in permanence. And so the galaxy adapted, not because Earth demanded it, but because it understood that Earth had already changed, and it was the rest of the galaxy now playing catch-up. The Council convened once more, this time with unease. The chamber no longer carried the air of authority it once projected. Debates dragged without resolution. Proposals stalled. Where once Earth had been silent, now it was absent. And that absence reshaped everything. Delegations that once spoke confidently now hesitated. The old power blocks had shifted subtly, lines redrawn not by treaties but by who Earth spoke to and who it did not. Humanity had not withdrawn entirely, it had evolved beyond needing permission. Its voice echoed in new ways, through trade routed via third parties, through research published without council review, through defense networks that operated autonomously from the galactic grid. Earth's influence became invisible but undeniable. Attempts to isolate them failed. Attempts to pressure them were ignored. Sanctions proposed never passed. No species wanted to test the limits of Earth's resolve. The Serati, once arrogant in posture, had grown quiet. Their fleets repositioned to defensive orbits. Border outposts were reinforced. But the threats they anticipated never came. No invasion. No open retaliation. Earth did not move with anger, it moved with inevitability. Its tactics were disruptive, indirect. Trade routes critical to Serati economics dried up through logistical redirection. Key data relays rerouted away from Serati networks. The impact wasn't immediate, but it was relentless. Without firing a single shot in official war, Earth had turned the Serati into a pariah. Other species began to distance themselves. Joint ventures were cancelled. Trade tariffs increased. Their influence within the Council waned, not through conflict but erosion. Earth had become the silent axis around which every calculation now turned. Inside the human systems, the transformation was complete. Civilian infrastructure had been hardened. Orbital cities now included integrated defense platforms. Education systems prioritized astrophysics, encryption, and strategic logistics. Young minds were raised not with fear but with awareness that security was not granted, it was earned. Earth had no illusions left. In the asteroid belts and outer colonies, new installations operated in complete silence. Self-sufficient, mobile, and hardened against intrusion, they represented the next phase of deterrence, systems too fast to intercept, too distributed to cripple. AI-piloted corvettes capable of vanishing into deep space and striking targets without warning. No boasting. No leaks. Just readiness. Human diplomatic posture remained minimal. Communications were sparse and purely transactional. When a treaty was renewed, it came with rewritten clauses, stricter terms, clear boundaries. When technology was shared, it came bundled with enforcement algorithms ensuring no tampering. Earth had learned. Trust, once freely given, now had conditions. The Council's leadership changed hands. The old guard, whose careers were built on consensus and delay, began to step aside. New representatives emerged, some quietly admiring Earth's efficiency, others cautious of its precision. A few had visited Earth and seen the unity firsthand, what a species could become when it no longer asked for protection but accepted the cost of self-determination. Earth's silence, once viewed as isolation, now spoke of confidence. Their memorials remained untouched, their losses honored without spectacle. Nova Terra had not been avenged with fire, but with consequence. Every system, every policy, every advancement since had stemmed from the unspoken vow that such loss would never happen again without price. And though no official declaration was ever made, everyone knew Earth was no longer to be underestimated. It had joined the galactic stage not as a junior partner, but as a force of balance. A species that had absorbed the blow meant to break it, and responded not with collapse, but with clarity. Years later, scholars would call this moment the turning point, not of war, but of recognition. The day humanity stopped explaining itself. The day it no longer sought to prove its place among the stars. Because from that day forward, every council session, every trade agreement, every fleet deployment carried a quiet question in the background. What will Earth do? And that was enough.